let's see. Has to go all the way back to first grade. It's a true story. They ask what you want to do when you grow up, and some kids say astronaut or teacher or fireman or work at a pet store or be a ballerina. I said I want to be a writer, not a screenwriter at the time, mind you, but being a kid, I loved reading. It was kind of a bookworm, and my favorite at the time was fairy tales. So I really wanted to do fairy tales for kids, and then it kind of evolved and escalated into creative writing. So I started writing when I was 10. Very typical, succession of short stories and really, really bad poetry, and a very sort of foolish attempt to write a novel when I was 16, which I never finished. I think it was like 400 pages into it, and I was realizing it wasn't even close to half of it was becoming part of a trilogy, so it's kind of runaway train. But I also, as I was doing all that, I was falling in love with movies. So by the time, I think it was about 17 or so, I knew that not only did I want to write, so that goal never sort of changed, much to my parents' dismay, but I also wanted to write for movies. And then the more you learn about the genre itself, you realize it's, writer, yeah, that's great, but it's really about being a writer and director. It's really, not just writing your own script, but also being able to cast it, direct it, call the shots on the set, all stuff. So, and I wound up going to USC Film School, and I was a production major, and I minored in filmic writing, which is basically a very fancy way of saying that I wanted to write and direct and be the next Lucas and Spielberg, and I'd like to think the Academy and my agent and all that stuff. So even though my background was different from most of the kids that went there, it was still, which is that is a whole other story unto itself. But it was still very much a typical kid who has seen one too many movie and has all these great ideas and aspirations. And now the way writing sort of came back around was, so for 4 years, you go to film school and you eat, live, breathe movies, which was actually, I do not believe that film school is a must for everybody, but certainly it was a good learning environment for me. Much like every kid, also, you really feel like you know. You really feel like you know everything. Actually, I just did a freshman orientation panel last year at USC. And so you look around and go, oh my God, that was me. And you really kind of, everybody was so arrogant, myself included, because you really think you know. You really think that you have all the answers, and it's the typical sort of the arrogance of youth coupled with yeah, I know that movie, I can do better. So, but I spent 4 years, directing stuff and editing stuff and doing my little movies, and every single one of them is like a personal epic. And you're thinking, oh yeah, this is the one that they're gonna see, and everybody's gonna go. This is the next, big Hollywood thing. So, did that for 4 years, and to be honest with you, I kind of fell out of love with directing, I suppose would be. There are aspects of it I still quite enjoy. But I felt like it alternated between being incredibly boring and incredibly stressful. It's either, takes you 4 hours to do this one cool shot where the camera spirals from the ceiling into the eye of the camera, which I've done. Or it's like, you're the captain on the deck of the Titanic and you're losing the light, you're losing the actor, you over budget, you have this, you that, and I don't know, I didn't really enjoy it as much. And also doing a lot of internships, something I'll talk about later in this interview, which I think is hugely helpful. I was doing a lot of internships and kind of getting hands-on training in the industry. You get a sense of what kind of the real business is all about, and I was kind of going, really? I mean, being a writer is tough enough, but being a director, I don't even know how I'm going to get there. So I basically going to put directing on hold and decided to focus on writing, and which was a smart thing. And then when I graduated, I faced the classical dilemma of, so okay, I want to write. So now I've got two choices. Door number one, get a job in the video store, write the Great American Screenplay, go the Tarantino route. And the door number two was get a real job and stop mom and dad from having a heart attack about my future every single day. Because, it's very sort of classical parents, med school, business school, law school, everything else was sort of throwing my life away. So, and it just so happened that one of the internships that I had led to a job very quickly, like two weeks out of school. And it was for a company called The Forge, which was at the time the kind of premier action adventure thriller company in the business. The principals were this guy, Rennie Harlan, who was coming off of Die Hard 2 and Cliffhanger, and was developing a kiss called Long Kiss Goodnight, which is, to this day, I think is one of the biggest spec sales in Hollywood. And he was also in post in a movie called Cutthroat Island, which was going to be the Pirates of the Caribbean of that year, which became like one of the most disastrous movies in history. And he was married to the time to Gina Davis, who was coming off of League of Their Own and Thelma and Louise. So basically, an action superstar director and a female, superstar, both on the rise. Kind of big powerful company. And for me, the reason why I desperately wanted to be there was because of Long Kiss Goodnight, because of Shane Black. There were two writers that I really credit with influence in the way I write, not the kind of stories that I tell necessarily, but just the gift of storytelling and how to keep the audience engaged. And they're Shane Black and William Goldman. And I think one of the first scripts I ever read was Lethal Weapon, and it very much influenced the style in which I write. So I kind of desperately wanted to be there. So I figured, okay, take this job. I get to meet Shane Black. I get to be part of Long Kiss Goodnight, but I'll write on weekends. And little did I know that it will become kind of this whole career. Because once you get into development, it's not really a job; it's a lifestyle. So you go from one job to another job to another job, and before you know, you have an office and an assistant and an expense account, and you're like, well, that's pretty good. Yeah, I guess I could put writing on hold for another month or two or a year. In my case, I ended up working in development for about 10 years. And then it was from this company called The Forge to a talent agency, ICM, 20th Century Fox. I was the CEO there for about 2.5 years. And then went to a company called Outlaw, where I worked on a movie called Training Day. And then spent 5 years as a VP at a company called Intermedia. That was my last job. And at the end of it, I was sort of kind of starting to realize that, fundamentally this goal, this dream that I had, I've been putting it off long enough, and endlessly, it's been my New Year's resolution, like endlessly to write the script this year, write the script. And so I was just kind of like, I can't put it off anymore. And this was also coupled with, I think development is great for certain people, but I also feel that if you truly want to be creative, it's a soul-sucking business. It's like saying, well, I really want to travel and see the world, so I'm going to get a job at a travel agency because I'm going to do it right. I'm going to study what it is, how to book a flight, and how to put together the most perfect trip. But first, rather than going somewhere, I'm just going to work at a travel agency or raising kids. It's like, well, before I have my own, I'm just going to be a nanny. So, I was a nanny for 10 years, and I mean, it does help because you learn that it's a craft. It's a business. It's almost like creative math. It's not painting Mona Lisa. It's not composing the Ninth Symphony. It's a little bit more structured than that. Then there is a method to the madness. And so, having been on the other side, where you buy scripts, where you are part of everything from packaging to production to post, you get the shorthand of it. So that was beneficial. But I also felt like it was enough. And so I wrote my first script finally since film school, and took me it took me a week to write the first draft and subsequent revisions. And then I ended up getting signed by Endeavor, and ended up selling it. And that kind of parlayed that into a career as a screenwriter, which is what I'm doing now. And I could not be happier.